problem with gender-neutral bathrooms. There, I said it. Most of the time, when I go into a gender-neutral bathroom, somebody has just taken a big, stinky dump. At some point, cisgendered people figured out that they now had a nice private bathroom where they could go and take all of their dumps. It's gross. Use your own bathrooms.
No, in the name of gender equality, I will take the steamiest, nastiest dumps in all of the women's bathrooms. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. My name is Luke Radowski here of WeAreChange.org, and we have an amazing show for you here today, as of course we are going to be going live for the next 2 hours with Vivek Ramaswamy in our studio. He is set to arrive in just a few minutes from now. And of course, the conversation definitely is going to get spicy when we go over to Rumble, where we are going to be continuing the second hour of this conversation. And you, the viewer, actually gets to call in with a live video question that is unscripted, unedited. Who knows what will happen? Who knows what will pop out? Who knows what will be shown? It's all done in the moment, live, unfiltered, unedited on rumble.com/WeAreChange. Of course, right now we are streaming on multiple platforms. Share this video with your friends and family members, as of course we have a lot of very curious and interesting questions for Vivek Ramaswamy that has been absolutely dominating the debates and the conversations after last night's presidential debates here in Miami, Florida. Now, one of the best ways to be a part of this conversation is to sign up to LukeUnfiltered.com. It's our own members area where, of course, when you sign up, you get access to a Telegram channel. I'm watching that Telegram channel, and then that Telegram channel is going to be where you guys will tell me you want to call in, and you will be able to call in live, unfiltered, unvetted questions here right in the moment when we do this broadcast and show to you here. Another great way to participate is with mysuperchat.com. We, of course, are using this service as a way to allow you guys to super chat and to ask us questions. If you don't want to become a member, if you don't want to call in, you could just go to mysuperchat.com. And of course, all of your support goes towards growing this independent media organizations. As of course, we are not financed or sponsored by any huge multinational globalist evil corporation that is here to lie to you and run psyops and larger agendas that of course screw you over. Psyops and agendas that very interestingly Vivek Ramaswamy kind of called out in yesterday's debate. So we're going to be getting into all of that plus a lot more for the next 2 hours. Joining me for this ride is, of course, the one and only Clint Russell of the Liberty Lockdown podcast, a man who is actually consistent and not a 304.
Consistent, so consistent that I don't think I voted for a GOP candidate other than Ron Paul when he was running under that banner. And Vivek Ramaswamy is getting me to be as close to voting for a GOP candidate as I have ever been in my life, aside from Ron Paul. His performance last night was incredible. I cannot wait to talk to him. I'm Clint Russell. I'm the host of Liberty Lockdown, also co-host of Tower Gang, and the co-host of this fine show right here. And I cannot wait for this conversation. Strap in.
Stephanie's also here. Steph, who are you?
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie. I am the official button pusher for We Are Change and our unofficial official podcast. Clint, when are we going to come up with a name for this beautiful podcast we've been hosting?
It could be the No Name Podcast, yes. Or we thought about some ideas. We were like uncancelable. We were like, no, that's actually horrible. I can't even spell that myself. I can't spell a lot. English is my second language for full transparency's sake out there. But this is a new adventure that we've been on within the last few weeks. We've been doing live, dedicated conversations with guests in studio that have been really fascinating. We had a lot of different people from so many different perspectives. We had debates on this show. We have officially now partnered with Rumble. We're going to be working exclusively with them for the foreseeable future and have at least 3 live video reports for you available in the moment once a week. So we got some really interesting people lined up. I got some very interesting friends, to say the least. All of them will be making their appearances here on this particular show. So expect a lot of craziness. So subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, click the notification button, as of course, there's going to be a lot to talk about in the very upcoming turbulent, tumultuous 2024 presidential elections that, of course, just got a little bit more interesting last night, as now the corporate media is attacking Vivek Ramaswamy. And I don't know about you, Clint, but I'm getting a lot of kind of very similar feels like I did during the Ron Paul 2008 presidential run, where the media was playing a lot of unfair games. They were, of course, keeping him away from the official polls and the official view counts. They were doing a lot of underhanded things and just blatantly attacking him. Just kind of very similarly like they're attacking Vivek Ramaswamy right now.
Well, I think it's going to get a lot worse, actually, because it seems to me that Vivek realized, after kind of playing friendly over the past few months, he realized that he was being kind of abused and taken out of context. And I think he really just embraced the Donald Trump perspective on the media, and his direct attack on the media mid-debate last night was one of the most powerful things I've ever seen. It was the open, where he's just like, he puts, I forget the name of the commentator for NBC News, but he puts her on the spot for pushing the Russia collusion lie, and he actually challenges her to answer the question. Because of that, I think that's the primary reason that this morning he is being listed as, a loser and trailing, Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, where in real time on the internet, as well as what you were actually there, so I'd love to hear your feedback on this. It seemed as if he was kicking ass, but you tell me.
Yeah, it was Lester Holt that he called out, who is a horrible fake news spreader that is absolutely doing no favor to the American people, and just essentially regurgitates in a very dignified, in a very suit, in a very official narrative, all the bull crap to lie to you. And when you look at what Vivek called him out on, it's just one aspect of many other aspects that Lester Holt usually lies to the American people to. He specifically mentioned Russian collusion. He especially mentioned meddling in the election, specifically mentioning the Hunter Biden story that was censored before the last presidential election, that according to many studies did have an effect on it, did solidify the Biden presidency and allowed him to become the next president of the United States. And he also warned they're going to do this again unless they're called out. And he was one of the few people, one of the refreshing kind of voices out there that actually didn't play as kind of a puppet. All these kind of establishment candidates, they were kind of saying the same things, but just a little bit differently. It was interesting to see Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley finish each other's neoconservative statements and bloodlust comments. And then when you look at everyone there, everyone kind of had their little purpose there to, read the official lines, to obey the official status quo of what they're allowed to think, of what they're allowed to say. And Vivek kind of came in there and was like, no, I'm going to ruffle some feathers here. And he did a great job at that. And I think that's why he's under attack.
I totally agree. And I think that the main problem with, Vivek or a Trump candidacy is that when they're up there giving a genuine alternative, it really makes explicit to the audience, which is the voter, that, there is an alternative. Like, I don't have to just vote for war with Russia or war with Iran. There's actually an alternative here. And I think they don't want you to feel that way. As long as they keep you in that binary trap of, well, we're obviously going to have a war, so we just have to pick a candidate that goes after the country that I find the least appealing. No. You can actually have a candidate who says, we're not going to go to war. We're actually going to try and avoid war. Now, I wish Vivek was a little bit stronger on that, but I understand with that audience the reason he's framing things that way, and I'll look forward to asking him further questions.
We have some super chats here that I think are worth talking about and noting here, as of course we have a very funny one on YouTube. And again, whether it's Rumble Rants, whether it's Streamlabs, whether it's YouTube chats, we're going to read every kind of comment that you guys give us, especially if you guys put a support to this independent media organization behind it. But Neurodivergent had a very interesting comment saying specifically, 3 inches is enough for any woman, quote, Ron DeSantis. As of course, there was a lot of comments specifically with Vivek mentioning that he is essentially not for Dick Cheney in heels. And then a lot of people were wondering if he's specifically talking about Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley answered back in a very kind of weird,
bizarre,
spastic statement saying that her heels are made of ammunition. What? That doesn't make sense. I made a comment about it and ratioed her just a little bit. Comments, it's too spicy to say here. We got another super chat by Tar Sick saying, Vivek nailed it last night, calling out the GOP leadership. Absolutely. I saw the head of the RNC at this debate, and she kind of like waddled in her seat, was sitting in there, but you could just see during the breaks, she was not happy. She was flustered. She was not in her best mood after Vivek called her out, as a lot of people critique this RNC head for, of course, lavish spending on a lot of fancy dinners, on a lot of extravagant causes, while of course denying funds to key races, which the Republicans keep losing, as a lot of people have even gone as far as to say that there's a deliberate sabotage of the Republicans happening right now, to the point where, of course, they are meant to lose, they're supposed to lose. And I think Vivek and Donald Trump are definitely shaking up this kind of scenario that's unfolding right now, and the establishment isn't happy about it. Frank Luntz was there too. I saw him in his seed oil bellied self there, and he tweeted out specifically how this is a rising star in the Republican Party. This is the same person that, of course, shares a bedroom with Kevin McCarthy and has been known for not being the most honest people. But he was, also kind of wobbling around the debate stage. One of the things that I thought was very interesting during the conversations that were happening on stage of the debate was the fact that, at one point I noticed Nikki Haley going after Vivek, and then Vivek trying to respond but couldn't because his mic was off. And I was like, but I only saw that once, and I haven't seen that done to anyone else. And overall, I think the battle of ideas was fought yesterday. And the larger ideas of critical thinking, of spreading the truth, of giving a damn about this country was kind of broken wide open, with the establishment now kind of freaking out a little bit, being like, hey, you're not supposed to say these things to the American public.
Yeah.
And all those videos were being shared around on social media, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I mean, they spent the first hour just talking about foreign policy. It's like there's really I think there's a tremendous amount of demand from the American populace for politicians that are actually focused on domestic issues and bringing our troops home. Stop sending foreign aid. We're drowning under inflation. Our budgets are blown up, both federally as well as personally. Credit card debt is reaching all-time highs. Mortgage interest rates are skyrocketing. The cost of living is out of control. We cannot continue to police the world. We need to focus on domestic issues. And the GOP, once again, spends the first hour just talking about Israel, Palestine, or China, or Russia. It's very disappointing, but Vivek is that breath of fresh air that I think so many people are looking for. And just to clarify one thing, when he said that 3-inch Dick Cheney and 3-inch heels comment, he said, you have two options on this stage tonight. Clearly a shot at DeSantis.
Yes, absolutely. And it was very telling. It was very interesting to see the kind of response, because they had certain individuals with certain campaigns sitting in one particular area. And they even announced during these presidential debates that if someone interrupts from one particular area, they know who the candidate they're representing is, and they will be taking away time from that candidate if the people in their sitting section actually disrupt. So you actually saw different rooms kind of erupt during the presidential debates. I was sitting next to the Vivek crowd and the Ron DeSantis crowd. Rumble was able to give us front row seats pretty much there. Shouts out to Rumble for inviting us. We did a live stream there. Okay, Steph, we're going to go to you in a second. They did a live stream there. We did a live stream there on rumble.com/wearechange on the ground there, showing you the situation and all the people that were attending. They also had no bathroom breaks. They said, you come out and you want to use the bathroom, you're not going to be allowed in, which I found absolutely ridiculous and childish. And I'm like, oh, yeah, whatever. But they were very clear, like, hey, I don't want any cheering. I don't want any booing. You guys do that, your candidate will get in trouble. Steph, I think you watched the debates too. What did you think about it from an outside kind of perspective?
Oh, I thought it was really interesting. Honestly, I feel like almost everyone did pretty well in terms of like speaking, and it was nice to be able to listen to everyone, and also quite interesting when Vivek was talking about bringing Joe Rogan and Elon Musk on and Tucker Carlson as the hosts. I was wondering, is that even like, could that actually be done?
That's actually a video that I did today for this YouTube channel that was just released on youtube.com/wearechange. I did a full independent report saying, yeah, probably if you look at Joe Rogan's contract being up, which it is very soon, if you look at his friendship with Elon Musk, if you look at all of these guys kind of hanging out with like Tucker Carlson, why wouldn't they kind of come together and say, hey, our country is in peril, our country is in danger, there's a lot of really significant bad things coming in front of us. Maybe we could stop some of this by having a real and honest conversation. I would love to see Jamie fact-checking all the presidential candidates as they're speaking. I would love to have, probably some kind of funny cigarettes offered to the candidates by Joe Rogan. I would love to have Tucker Carlson bewildered look during these debates. I would love to have Elon Musk hyper-focusing on some kind of high-level, high IQ autistic question that no one saw coming. I would love to see all of that, and I think the general public would too. And Vivek just bringing that up to the general public makes it a possibility to actually happen. Well,
and keep in mind too, it was Tucker Carlson. I forget what event it was at, but it was Tucker Carlson who basically ended Mike Pence's political career and aspirations when he asked him about domestic policies, and Mike stupidly was like, "That's not my concern." It's like, well, that better be your concern, President of the United States. Hopeful. So yeah, I would love it. I mean, this is the entire critique against Ronna McDaniel, is that she's not focusing on the youth movements in this country. That, like, it's just stale. They don't. I think the real problem is that the reason that they don't offer financial resources to some of these candidates that have an opportunity is because they're genuine American first candidates, and that's not what the old guard GOP wants. I think if you actually just give the American people what they want, which is politicians focus on not just America first, but America only, is really what I want to see. I think that then they would win.
Yeah, the first kind of portion of that debate was, how much more can we do for Israel? What else can we do for Israel? And all the candidates kind of repeated the same kind of talking points and the same kind of lines, not deviating from the larger point, other than Vivek, who said, maybe Israel could defend itself. Maybe we're doing Israel a disservice by making them dependent on us. Maybe we're doing them a disservice by bringing other countries into the mix here, saying, hey, this is an unfair situation. Hey, I have beef with America. Now, therefore, I have beef with Israel. Maybe we shouldn't create a situation like happened in the early 1900s, where alliances and countries came together, and then bada bing, bada boom, you got yourself a global war because of this kind of general thinking that I think is absolutely detrimental to the American country, to the American people, to the interest of this country. Because if you truly did care about America, you would be caring about what's happening here right now with the open borders, with the opioid epidemic, with all the injuries that are happening because of big pharma, with all the cancer rates and depopulation efforts that have been successfully utilized in a way where the American public, the American population, we're losing citizenry in massive numbers, to the point where Elon Musk talks about this a lot, and I have been talking about this for many years now. There's going to be a crisis with the populations because people are not reproducing enough. People always in the corporate media want you to believe that there's just too many people in this world. You got to stop having children for climate change. Bull crap. That is absolutely not true, as they're literally importing the third world into this country and incentivizing and pushing programs that stop people from actually having children and families in this country. But I think it's fair to say the main talking point from the establishment is war. We want more of it. We want you guys tearing each other to shred. We want you guys fighting each other. As of course, just even recently in California, there was major clashes between Israeli and Palestinian protesters where people were fighting each other, beating each other up. This is what they want. This is what they're getting. As of course, the situation with the United States inside of the Middle East is a very dangerous one. As of course, now Fox News today is reporting that there are now 42 attacks that have happened on U.S. forces in the wake of this larger conflict that, of course, is unfolding right now in the Middle East. 42 separate attacks, one of which the United States answered back once again with a second round of airstrikes in Syria. Yes, it's not Groundhog's Day anymore. The United States is once again bombing Syria the second time in the last few days, which, again, very dangerous gambit. Who are we bombing? Well, we're actually bombing the radical Islamists that were supported by Saudi Arabia, Israel, the United States a few years ago that were there to go after Bashar al-Assad. Those guys that were defeated by the Shiites here, that we're fighting now those guys. So again, just a very confusing geopolitical situation unfolding here that definitely deserves some context, because everyone's saying just finish the job, just do what you got to do, and in reality, if you look at the America's overreaction, especially in 2001, I believe it was deliberate. I believe it was a trajectory that they knew that they were going on, but it was devastating, not just for the people of the Middle East, but the people of the United States that, of course, were robbed, were bamboozled, and screwed over like no today because of this insane policy that, of course, people now are saying we should do all again. I think that's a dumb idea. I don't know about you.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, this is all I'm imploring is just people to really reconsider or just remember the lessons of the war on terror. Just extrapolate a little bit forward and apply them once again to the October 7th attacks against Israel. And I think, Republicans are well known for being in opposition to welfare. There's really only one exception, and that's welfare to the nation of Israel, which, by the way, as Vivek has pointed out many times, has a smaller debt to GDP ratio than America. They're actually doing better than us financially, and we send them $3 billion a year. We sent them $14 billion last week. God knows how much we'll send them over the next year in their war against Hamas. It's insane.
Yeah, I just got a text from the Vivek campaign. They're running 10 minutes behind, so just a heads up. So they probably will be here around 3:40 p.m. Eastern time, as we, of course, have other super chats that we are going to be reading here. As, of course, we got one from Le Revolution. Cultura Ayan Razi. That's a very confusing YouTube name, but you said, quote, Luke, you have to introduce him as Vivek the Destroyer. And I don't know, that might be a little bit too much. Is that too much, Clint? What do you think?
I don't think so. I think he destroyed both DeSantis and Nikki Haley's careers last night, honestly. And I don't know what it is about DeSantis. He can't help but have at least one moment per debate where he makes this grimace and he looks like an android that's malfunctioning. It breaks my heart. I moved here for the guy, but what's happening? What's happening with him? I don't understand.
Autism. Absolute 100% autism. And you could just see it in his kind of mannerisms. You could see it in the way he kind of walks. Hey, if he just admitted it and was like, hey guys, I'm autistic, he would get a lot of support. I'm just saying. Steph, do you want to read the next super chat here by Hawk the Maker?
Hawk the Maker. Luke, your shirt says it all. The You Are Here podcast.
You Are Here podcast. Do you like the name of that podcast? Because like the shirt that I'm wearing right now that you could get on thebestpoliticalshirts.com highlights 1984, Brave New World, and Fahrenheit 451. Great books. If you haven't read those books, I can't recommend them enough. And they were critically important for me to be who I am right now.
Same.
For some strange reason, they actually recommended them in New York City public school, and I actually read these books back to front multiple times, and they had a big impact on me. Now schools are saying these books are too controversial, you shouldn't read them. But the shirt that I'm wearing highlights specifically these three books, and in the middle, a Venn diagram that Kamala Harris really loves, saying, "quote You Are Here." And when we look at our kind of modern dystopian society, yeah, that makes sense. And I kind of like the name "You Are Here." You Are Here podcast?
It's not bad. I mean, we'll add it to the list of
Which one
possibilities.
do you like? You like a specific one?
I still think Uncanceled is like the coolest one because we're going to bring in people that blacklisted. But let me add one book to that list. The Moon is a Harsh Mistress by Robert Heinlein. One of my favorites. Definitely deserves to be on that T-shirt.
I have another one with about 20 books and movies.
Oh, okay.
So a very difficult T-shirt to read, but an important T-shirt to, of course, represent and to talk to people. We got another super chat by Collis Bryant, who says, only other thing I would have liked from Vivek when addressing the border. Hold on, get out of there. Hold on. The border drug question is if he have turned it back to the panel and mainstream media about not holding the current administration accountable rather than run interference? That's a very good question. We got another super chat here by Schooner Born 18 saying, "Hi, Dad." Well, hi, Dad. And thanks for watching and participating in here. As of course, we are just waiting for the next few moments and minutes until we get Vivek in here, and then we have a lot of very, very interesting questions that we are going to be asking him, specifically when it comes to a lot of controversial things, a lot of conspiracy things. As I think these conversations are very important, especially after all the news headlines that we have right now. We're doing pretty good. When Larry Sinclair had his bombshell interview with Tucker Carlson, we had him on the show right afterwards. I think we're having Vivek here at the perfect time to ask him a lot of the bigger deep dive down the rabbit hole questions that I don't think anyone else is going to be ever asking him. No. So it's going to be a fun show, to say that.
Yeah, they won't touch the topics that we're going to touch on the Rumble side of this debate. That's for sure.
On YouTube, we'll still, we'll
push it. We'll push it a little bit.
We will. That should be the whole, we should just do a YouTube 1 hour show where it's like show news articles, be like
just boilerplate talking point.
Mainstream media reports this. Oh, more Americans are dying from fentanyl.
Deployed to the Middle East.
Yes, yeah. Oh, another war. Oh, no. So yeah, that's modern life here. But again, the news stories here, especially from the Middle East, are concerning. And Vivek, again, one of the few people actually daring to speak out against this lunacy, against this madness.
What's the argument? Is it Syrian proxies? Is it Iranian proxies in Syria? Is that they're launching?
ABC News has the headline that Iranian-backed militants launched at least 40 attacks on U.S. forces since October 27th. Now, it's still unclear because a lot of this official reporting is done through, of course, anonymous government sources.
Yeah, so
and there's a lot of false flags. There's a lot of drills. There's a lot of things that, of course, are usually not what they say they are, especially when you look at incidences like the Gulf of Tonkin incident, especially when you look at incidences like the U.S. Lusitania, especially when you look at, historical events that definitely do deserve to be questioned in our modern discourse. But let's read this article here, and it says that the U.S. military on Wednesday said American warplanes struck a weapons storage facility in eastern Syria that officials said was being used by Iranian-backed militants responsible for dozens of drone and rocket attacks against American troops in the region over the last 3 weeks. Now, it's also important to note here that ABC News probably will not be telling you is that the United States literally has a military base in Syria when the Syrian government's like, hey, can you please not? As the United States is there siphoning oil from that country, when that country is like, hey, we would like to keep our national resources and oil, and the United States is like, no, best we could do is keep our troops here and make sure that we get all the national resources.
Which, by the way, never declared a war against Syria. Never declared, and we just have bases there. Like, how is this permissible? And now we're doing quote unquote limited strikes. Well, in other words, that would be bombing a sovereign nation without a declaration of war. Once again, it's amazing what they're able to get away with. There's no constitutional procedure for any of this.
Yep. Donald Trump even went as far as to bomb Syria because of a chemical weapons attack that, of course, a lot of people heavily questioned. A lot of the experts actually provided some very interesting information about that, highlighted what essentially was a larger emotional manipulation campaign that was used in order to try to justify some kind of larger action and another Libya-type style counter-offensive and insurgency that, as we have seen, literally brought back human trafficking and human slavery to the Libyan country that now is a failed state and dealing with incredible amounts of sectarian violence, just like, Iraq, just like, Afghanistan. It's almost as if there's this kind of protocol that the United States keeps doing, creating more and more chaos and making sure that a lot of people lose their lives for what? Why are we doing this? This absolutely makes no sense at all.
See, what it's infuriating to me and any of the non-interventionist libertarian camp that have been opposed to all of this madness for decades is that during the debate, you have Nikki Haley you've got DeSantis, and you've got Chris Christie that are all up there giving the same tired ass old talking points that like empirical evidence proves these people have been wrong about everything for decades. Vivek is up there giving the counter argument, and he's being shamed by the media for it. It's like, based off of their own track record, how are these people not laughingstocks? Why are they still viable presidential candidates? In fairness, I don't think any of them actually are. But in terms of like, they get campaign contributions from Boeing and Lockheed Martin. It's like, why? I think it's just about narrative control. I think they just want to have someone up there that is giving the pro neocon, perspective, so that those in the old guard GOP, largely boomers, feel at home still. But fortunately, it's the young people who are sick to death of this endless warfare.
And more importantly, we got to understand this American policy creates more of an excuse later down the line, radicalizes more people later down the line that, of course, are going to be their next intended targets. We're financing both sides of the conflict. We're giving our tax dollars away into the Middle East, literally just dropping weaponry and the most advanced military hardware there and saying, whoopsie, now we have more conflicts to fight and more people to go after. And people need to realize if we took a step back, if we didn't do any of these kind of ridiculous policies that we have been doing since 2001, even before that, especially when it comes to the baby incubator story from the Iraq War, which was another major psyops by, of course, literal diplomatic actors on the world stage that ran another huge propaganda lie that the American people bought when there was even a lot of backdoor dealing between Saddam and the original Bush, who, of course, was a prominent CIA secret society member that lost his presidential election to Bill Clinton, who also probably was another agent with Amina, Arkansas, working with the intelligence agencies, bringing in literal cocaine into the United States in very mysterious circumstances and ways, right through the city and town that, of course, he was in charge of. What a coinkydink that all these people are kind of intertwined, doing really horrible things, and then being essentially compromised and then being put in high positions of power, while the main thing that kind of bides them is this, I would say, sociopathic bloodlust to create whatever excuse, whatever conflict they can on the world stage in order just to give everyone as much problems as they can.
Right. And then you have Iran-Contra under Reagan. So basically, like, every presidency in my lifetime has had some sort of psyop war that has been avoidable but not avoided.
We got another super chat by Missy Mary saying, how about the best political podcast? I like that. I kind of really like that name. The best, because we have the bestpoliticalshirts.com. The bestpoliticalpodcast.com sounds pretty good. I kind of like that as well. Scrape O Goat said, hey, Uncle Luke. Hey there. How's it going? We got another super chat here by Itchy Ichago. Steph, do you want to read this one?
Itchy Go says, you have live chat on X now. Are you able to see them live from your view, Luke?
No, I am not, but we are multi-streaming on a lot of different platforms, and of course, those platforms all go away until we have the real conversation on rumble.com. And shouts out to Rumble. You want to read the next one?
We have Adam Schoit saying, going for autistic vote, probably not the best DeSantis plan.
Hey, he doesn't have much now, okay? All right, if he has anything, if there's going to be a winning strategy, it's going to have to be him just being brutally honest, brutally just leaning in to all the things that people attacked him for. And what better kind of PR strategy than to say, hey, I got autism. This is who I am. And that would make him endearing.
Yeah, it would. I mean, it would make the grimaces make more sense. But the problem is that he has also embraced, overt militarism, which I think is a dying breed in the GOP.
Yes. You want to? Racist Ronnie has another super chat saying, Luke, when will you have Elijah Safer on? He's hiding from the U.S. government in Australia. Is he hiding? If he does, that kind of sucks. Australia kind of sucks too. So, we usually have, I prefer to have guests in studio here, and I think that's how I want to have the conversations. The conversations are so different, especially when it comes to just having them in real life, face to face. You could just feel the energy, you could feel the vibe, but they're so much better than they are online. So I don't know about zooming people in. We're going to be doing our best to, of course, make sure that that does not happen. Maya E asks another super chat here. Steph, do you want to read this one?
Sure. Ask him if we can make a Spaces on X with Tucker, Elon, him, and
Josie.
Joe.
Oh, Rogan?
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
That's a very big ask here. The redheaded libertarian also gave a super chat saying, "You Are Here was Elijah Schaefer and Sydney Watson's podcast." Yes. Oh, yeah. So they're saying we should take their name. Got it. Okay.
Oh.
Or that it's
we
taken.
don't want to take their name. A racist Ronnie says, "Why is everyone on our side abandoning a lot of Elijah Schaefer's comments here? I don't think anyone's abandoning him. The dude is a fugitive in Australia. People barely talk about Owen Schroyer and etc. We talk about Owen Schroyer a lot, and it looks like he has been put into solitary confinement, prolonged solitary confinement because of the health protocols, but now because of some other kind of incident that happened. And truly, what's happening to Owen Schroyer is absolutely insane. It is criminal, and it highlights just how far gone this country is, where independent journalists who have an opinion are now being literally sent to jail. This is a chilling effect. This is why your support is more crucial than ever. This is why we have LukeUnfiltered.com. This is why we read the super chats here. This is why we try to have these kind of larger conversations, because it's make it or break it here in America, as of course our rights are dwindling away. The technocrats, the large multinational corporations, the globalists, the banksters, all of them, they're just trying to see anything and everything that they could take away from us. And we are reaching a very big crescendo moment that is really going to be a make or break moment for America, whether it goes down a path of personal responsibility, freedom, and liberty, or a path of just a puppet empire that is there to deliberately self-sabotage itself and take the ship down while the rats steal all the silver on it.
I couldn't agree more. I think we are at critical mass. It's going to go one direction or the other, and that is why you should go to Unfiltered.com.
And we have uncensored.com too.
Okay, and become a supporter. LukeUnfiltered.com and support our work. We need bail funds because the truth that we're telling, we're going to end up getting prosecuted.
Yeah. We need lawyer funds. We're not dealing with any judicial stuff that we know of as of yet. But with the way things are going and legal lawfare, it's inevitable.
Well,
I think all independent media now needs a law fund just in case.
For real.
I was hanging out with Viva Frey and Barnes recently at Mar-a-Lago, and I'm like, listen, I got to become friends with you guys. They're like, why?
I need a lawyer.
Do you see what's happening? You guys are lawyers. We're best buddies now, pal. Like I need your guys' help and assistance here. So
Viva's brilliant. I bet he's a great lawyer.
No, Viva's awesome, and Barnes is also an incredible human being as well. He does really, really important work. Awesome. Shouts out to Viva Frey and Barnes and their show. I like watching their show. They're also, of course, on Rumble as well. But I made sure, hey, we're going to make sure we're going to be buddies here. So, that's pretty important. Just got another text here. ETA 3:53 p.m. Eastern times. I'm calling them lazy liberals because they're late, like everyone here in Miami is.
I was on time, just for the record.
You're always on time, Clint.
Thank you, Steph. Thank you. Anybody has any questions for Vivek? We'll try and get to some of the super chats, so go ahead and get those in too.
Matthew Hammond has another super chat here saying, can you talk to Vivek about his support of the TPP? He said that is what is different for him from Trump. And I think I saw some of his comments, particularly about that, specifically going after the free market capitalistic aspects of it. But I think maybe he might not be aware of how a lot of other globalists are using this as a way to, of course, be very predatory against the blue-collar working class and essentially create major disadvantages against the American people, which essentially these larger trade deals are all in the disguise of free market capitalism, freedom, when in reality there's a lot of government collusion there, a lot of backhand deals and regulations and rules that screws a lot of people over and never truly live up to these larger, ideas of free market capitalism, which clearly we do not have in our modern day society.
Yeah, nowhere close. Trans-Pacific Partnership, I haven't dug deep enough into it to know if it's a fair trade deal, to be honest, but if it comes up, it comes up.
Lissima Lestat says NNN is globalist conspiracy to slow reproduction. I don't know what NNN is, Shima, but yeah, I think it's fair to say that there is a big slow of reproduction, of childbirth, and of Western nations that are just absolutely being obliterated. Rosak, Steph, do you want to read this one?
Ruzak says, I'd be curious to hear Vivek's position on BRICS and the threat to the petrodollar.
Yep, that's a good question as well. And then do you want to read the next one?
I am what I am. Have you heard about the FBI harassing the journalists from the public? Also, can't wait to get your supplements in the mail. Thank you so much. I am what I am.
Thank you for that super chat. Yeah, I've heard a couple stories now of FBI agents showing up at the doors. I saw one story that I retweeted on my Twitter account, but I haven't been able to kind of delve into it, as of course this is now the standard procedure of the Federal Bureau of Investigations that predominantly goes after activists, goes after journalists, goes after parents who show up at parent-teacher conferences. So, yeah,
what journalists?
This is why we need the journalist from Publica.
Oh, ProPublica?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. Do you know what story they were covering?
I have no idea.
I'll have to look into that
with you. And we got another super chat from Fing Book saying, thanks, Vivek, for blasting Nikki and the media. Vivek's not here. We got a few more minutes. I think we got like 10 more minutes.
Hey, before he gets here, I wanted to ask you, was it evident? Because at home, it was crystal clear that he had dominated that debate. Live, different feeling?
No. It was pretty clear that as soon as he started speaking, everyone was kind of like,
yeah.
His opening comments definitely took the air out of the auditorium that we were all in, and everyone was kind of woken up from their stupor after being scolded by these authoritarians on NBC News about not cheering, not clapping, not making any kind of noise, and not being able to have bathroom breaks. So he really woke a lot of people up. He got my attention. I was like, whoa, you knew that this was a major moment. You knew that this was a moment that, of course, was going to be shared, was going to be very impactful. And Lester Holt kind of sat there like, oh crap, he got in that, you know what? And there's no going back from me getting my gluteus maximus handed to me on national television on my own show, where I just got called out for essentially being a bigger agent for the state. Steph, do you have something to say?
I mean, I did, but it kind of just flew when you were talking about your gluteus maximus. Sorry,
yes.
That image is very right in my mind right now.
We got. You sent an article here specifically talking about the latest drama with Ronna McDaniel, the head of the RNC, that allegedly was also overheard trashing Vivek and saying that he, quote, won't get a cent from us. And that kind of makes sense with what the RNC has been doing already, as a lot of people say that they are absolutely not spending their funds in an appropriate, wise way and getting a lot of criticism.
I just wanted to point out, too, that this isn't just an RNC thing. This is also a DNC thing. That they, like Bernie Sanders, had a much better chance of winning that election than Hillary did, but they gifted it to Hillary because they want someone who protects their interests. They're not interested in democracy. They're interested in force feeding you a particular, entree. And it's like, I don't want any of these entrees that you're offering. I'd rather go through the drive-thru and pick me up some Bernie Sanders or some Vivek, but I'm not allowed to. So I think this is why so many people are questioning, the democratic process at this point, is that it's obviously being forced upon us, and it's not actually us making these decisions at all.
Yeah, the New York Post definitely isn't doing anyone a favor with their article that's titled "Republican Debate Verdict: Impressive Haley Shines, Stupid Vivek Self-Destructs." What kind of
ridiculous.
world, what kind of reality is the New York Post living in? I want to see some of the comments here. And then, of course, the first one is Ashley St. Clair saying, said literally no one. I definitely have to like that one. We got another one by Most Peaceful Memes. He does really incredible work saying, how much did the Haley campaign pay for this post? Another great comment here. And my verdict, the New York Post didn't watch the debate. And yeah, they're getting roasted in the comment section. As of course, I think this is an important moment for a lot of people to understand the power of the establishment is being challenged very significantly. And when they are, they're overreacting in such a very lame, pathetic way. There's no merit in this kind of understanding unless you're living under a rock, unless you're deliberately just trying to get away, trying to pull one over on the American people who you think are really that dumb that will just believe you if they didn't watch the debates. Because if you watch the debates, there was a clear victor. And there's multiple polls here. A lot of people ran their own polls on Twitter. That Vivek absolutely dominated this debate and won. So more just nonsense from the corporate media, which we could expect a lot more from.
Yeah, and I'm. This is probably the thing that makes me most optimistic is that these kind of quasi outsider candidates continue to present terrible problems for the democratic process, which is, that's how democracy ought to work, is that these outsiders ought to actually have a chance of winning if they have a message that's compelling enough that they get enough support to actually win the election. But as we've seen with Ron Paul and the abuse of him during his campaigns, both in 08 and 12, and then Bernie Sanders, which I was not a fan of, but still he was absolutely screwed over, and then Trump, and now Vivek. Anybody that is actually presenting more of a variety of opinions, more of an America First oriented outlook, that is shunned by the powers that be. And I think that's really disturbing that, America First is so unappealing to the powers that be in this country. And I think that is pretty good evidence that we're not being controlled by the people that, sit in D.C.
We got some Rumble rants here from Drake Moore saying, ask Vivek what methods he could use to restore the balance of power and his thoughts on a convention of states. Oh, of course, we got the convention of states question. We get a lot of those.
Always.
Florida Bob has another very interesting super chat that I think is absolutely worth asking, saying, ask Vivek about his wife, Aprova. Steph, keep it on the Rumble
not
chat.
showing it.
I know, but I'm still reading it here. Ask Vivek about his wife, Aprova Ramaswamy, MD, working at the Ohio State University Les Wexner's Medical Center, running for POTUS with ties to Wexner. Quote, Epstein, watch his response. That's a very interesting question, as of course, that's probably one of the issues that we will be getting into on Rumble. not on the digital gulag that, of course, is known as YouTube, where the conversations are, of course, stinted. But again, we kind of explained this theory to the general public. We explained it to everyone that follows us and watches us, that this is kind of a strategic way also. It does suck that you do have to kind of censor yourself on YouTube, but in doing so, we do kind of water down the message. We do kind of give a message that's more accepting to the normies out there, to the Kyles, to the Karens out there who have been watching the corporate media, have been reading the New York Post, who are not aware that there's a huge agenda. If you're not aware that there's a huge agenda, by the way, that's against you, your country, your people, your neighborhood, your communities, you're not paying attention. Some people, let's just be honest here, they got their head in the sand, they're watching sports ball, they're not paying attention. They're preoccupied with just trying to survive in this horrible economy, and they don't understand the greater lengths that sinister people go towards taking advantage of your ignorance, and therefore watering down the message so that it could be more suitable for the Kyles and Karens here on YouTube to take down is, I think, a strategic way to kind of operate. Then we go to Rumble. When we go to Rumble, all gloves are off, and we do not hold anything back. You could see some of the Rumble shows that we did that I'm kind of shooting midstream, being like, holy cow, we're getting close to the power lines here. Like, holy cow, like we have gone off. I go off on tangents. Nothing scripted here. There's nothing that I read off of to talk to you and have this honest, real conversation. There's a power to being in this kind of flow state, to being in this kind of moment, not having any scripts, not having any kind of rules, not having any kind of things that I have to of course, censor other than being on YouTube. But when I'm Rumble, that stream of consciousness flows through me and we go off.
Yep.
And
Hide your wives, hide your kids. We're headed to Rumble.
well, we got
Not
to
yet,
get
not
we
yet.
got to get Vivek in here. As soon as we get Vivek in here, we got two kind of softball questions. Then we're going deep down the rabbit hole here. As
The
of course.
rumble hole. The rumble hole. Free speech matters. We should coin that. The rumble hole. I like it.
Okay, yeah, I like that too.
Name our show the Rumble Hole.
Well, that sounds classy. Welcome to the Rumble Hole, guys. We're.
It's creative.
Maybe not. I don't know.
I got another super chat here by I'm Not Your Buddy Guy saying, question for Vivek. Unless already asked, does he plan to do anything about the lies and manipulation from the mainstream media and social media? Well, as a government official, it's going to be very hard to try to do any of that, as of course the government, I don't think, should be policing speech. Yep. Even if that speech might be wrong or incorrect, I don't think the government should ever be a larger decider of truth. So my own personal take on that is I hope he reins in the social media hijacked intelligence agency operatives that are using
Bingo.
it to lie to people. If he does that, we're good, as long as we have actual free speech in this country that should be respected according to the First Amendment, according to the laws that are already on the books here. And again, people ask, what do we do? What do we say? Use the laws that we have now. Even though there's a lot of stupid laws now, I do have to agree with that kind of counter argument. But when it comes to just the basic stuff, when it comes to harassing people, threatening people, there's basic stuff that we could adhere to that, of course, would be reasonable. What's not reasonable is banning news stories like YouTube recently did that Steven Crowder broke, that essentially is the story of the month, if not the year, that the majority of the people in the world won't be able to hear on Instagram, on Facebook, on Google, on YouTube. We can't even mention it here. And as soon as that story came out, I'm like, this story is spicy. Because this story is spicy, I'm not going to talk about it here. I'm going to talk about it on lukeunfiltered.com, and that's exactly what we did here. So, yeah.
Every time I'm preparing for a show, I will just look at my list of topics that I'm considering covering, and I'll be like, can't do that on YouTube, can't do that one on YouTube, can't do that one on YouTube. Like, how is that a world that we want to live in? Like, where I can't even discuss a topic because, like, not even like what I will say about it, but just the topic itself will probably get me kicked off the platform. It's terrible. It's just stifling. It's awful.
Want to read some of these super chats? Clint, feel free to get out your phone.
Sure.
Oh, the Redhead Libertarian wrote a super chat saying NNN is no nut November, fellas.
Oh.
Be careful with that one. A lot of people could get prostate cancer from that. So you got to do your due diligence. You got to do what is right for you. And man, I could just imagine that some people saying it's a psyop to slow reproduction. Could be, actually, because I've talked to people who have tried it, and they talk about how essentially they become infertile the longer they go on without finish. Without family-friendly show here. You know what I mean? Without sound effects might have to do here. Let's go read off some of the other super chats here. Steph, do you want to read the next one?
Sure. Some dude says Biden's DOL is pushing a new fiduciary rule. Can you ask Vivek about it? It's the government preventing individuals from owning their 401ks from BlackRock. Thank you, some dude.
You want to read the next one?
Brett Ain't Dead says, discovered Luke through Timcast. Keep up the great work, my dyslexic speaking Polak friend. Independent media, decentralized revolution for the win.
Yeah, this is your dyslexic speaking Polish friend here with you along for the ride for the fail and fall of Western civilization. So yeah. Martha Budando says, can you tell Vivek to bring up the Federal Reserve printing money to fund all these wars in the next debate? Great comment. Very interestingly, Ron DeSantis actually brought up the Federal Reserve and was one of the few people to actually criticize it yesterday, which other than his neocon talking points was pretty good.
Yeah.
You want to read the next one, or Clint, do you want to pick one? Just go on the main chat. Go on youtube.com/wearechange, and then you could just click on one of the super chats and read them.
All right, I'll work on it.
Steph, do you want to read the next one?
G. Rivas. Can you ask about the side-by-side video with Vivek and Obama saying those same words in the same tone and speed? Have you seen it yourself?
I have not, but that definitely seems like an interesting question. If there's members of lukeunfiltered.com on the Telegram channel, definitely send it to me, and then we could definitely blast that one. We got another super chat here by Mega YouTube 99 saying, "Can you expand on Tim's recent announcement of we're gonna take over the machine? Will you guys host your own debate?" Well, if we were, we wouldn't be telling you. So whatever bigger plans are ahead, it's usually best not to tell a lot of people about it because there's a lot of sabotage efforts that surprisingly happen from individuals who don't want you doing big things. Clint, you got one?
Did we already read Ohio in here? Cecil 7247?
No.
That's where we're at.
Okay. We've known about his opinion on Ohio issue. 1, just passing. Ask him about his opinion on Ohio issue. 2, cannabis legalization passing. That was confusing. I'm sorry. Thank you for your $20.
Tony Mathis gave another super chat. Ask Vivek about the story that we cannot talk about on YouTube. Yeah, maybe on Rumble. I'm Not Your Buddy Guy gave another super chat saying, question for Vivek, unless already asked, does he plan to do anything about the lies and the manipulation from the social media? Okay, sorry. So now what you're hearing is Atlas, which means that there's somebody here at the door. Clint, take it away, and then Stephanie, keep reading the super chats for Clint.
Dick Dickerson says...
You can't say that on YouTube.
Oh, I can't? Oh. Well, be nicer to Steph or I will build Seamus a potato gun. If you do that, you will have started the worst conflict that'll go on for generations. Please don't do that.
I'm not afraid of potatoes.
Well, I am afraid of Seamus. He is the Irish famine man.
No, I'm good.
Vivek.
How you doing, guys?
Vivek the Destroyer of Neocons has arrived!
Yeah, right over there. Atlas couch right here.
It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Give me a hug.
How you doing, brother? Good to see you in person.
Good to meet you.
How you doing?
Hi.
Hey.
This is
nice
Stephanie.
to meet you.
Stephanie, good to see you.
This is Vivek, and we started the live show. Everyone's waiting to, of course, ask you so many different questions here. But first of all, great job on the presidential debate here. Stephanie, you got to do the button pushing.
I appreciate
You can't
that,
forget.
guys. Thank you.
You killed it.
I think. Sorry, go ahead.
Fun.
That's
where I'm at.
that's you could see that. You could see that in people who enjoy what they're doing, and it is contagious. So keep doing what you're doing, because I think when you went after the moderators, rightfully so, these people have lied so many times. So many times they have just told us just these absolute non-truths. So many times they have just absolutely been ridiculing the American people, treating us as if we're some kind of stupid idiots out there. And then when you finally went to Lester Holt and said, you lied to us, that was powerful. And I wanted to ask you, you probably had a lot of realizations that you didn't before trying to become the next president of the United States. What would you say were some of the biggest revelations that you had when it comes to this entire experience that you had?
I'd say it's a new revelation every day. You come into this, I wouldn't think of myself as naive on this. I mean, I understand how games are played. You think I'm coming from the business world into politics, understanding that it's going to be a corrupt process. I think I underestimated the extent to which that was actually true. And I think that every day you kind of get your eyes opened to some sort of new dimension of, I came in thinking like, all right, the only system is going to be to break the system. You came in thinking maybe you could more cleverly play the game than the other people. No, they're definitely more practiced at the game of cleverness, of how to one-up you. And so the only answer is to torch the system and to start from the burnt ashes on the ground. That's kind of been my
guy. Let's go.
My net conclusion in this. And that was my philosophy with respect to running the government. But I think it is every bit the same way in the political process as well. And I can go into details, but that's my 50,000-foot takeaway.
Absolutely. I think that message resonates with a lot of people who just see the system as totally being unfair to it, totally not serving its interests, totally not serving its needs. And you being one of the few vessels out there who says, hey, hold on, this game's rigged over here. These people are kind of puppeteers here for the special interest class. They're all kind of saying the same thing. The only person not saying the same thing is you. Now, a lot of people wanted to specifically ask you about your path to victory. Will you become a vice president? Will you have a cabinet members? I don't want to ask you those questions. I want to ask you something more important, because when we look at presidential campaigns, and I'm friends with Ron Paul. If you see the impact that he had, especially with the Lovolution, you see people still inspired to that today from
I actually met him
2008.
for the first time.
And
Recently.
I've been talking about this for a while. People are saying, "Oh, he can't win. It doesn't matter." I'm like, hold on, wait. That's not even true, because anything could happen in politics.
Yeah.
And just a couple months ago, everyone was telling us it's going to be a DeSantis Trump ticket. It's going to be a beautiful ticket. Look at the political landscape right now. That is absolutely not going to be happening here. But the ideas that you spread here are contagious. When an idea's time has come, there's nothing that could stop it. You are, I believe, a vessel for some of those larger ideas. What are those ideas, according to you, that you want to get out there to the general public with this election?
Yeah, and I do want to be clear, Luke. I'm not in this just to get out ideas. I think that we wouldn't be. There's a lot of ways to do that. You guys are doing it, through the work you do here, writing books, otherwise. I do believe it takes a unique skill set right now to change this country. And I think there's 3 different attributes that whoever the next president is going to need in order to actually be successful in reviving our constitutional republic with 3 branches of government, not 4, staying out of foreign wars and otherwise. One is, I think it's going to take somebody from the outside who's not captured by special interests. And I think that every politician dances to the tune of their biggest donor. In my case, that biggest donor is and will remain me. Because we put in, 8-figure sums, would be tens of millions of dollars that will have gone into this campaign by the end of this year. Okay. Trump has that too. Fair enough. The second thing you're going to need is somebody, though, who is both an outsider who has total disregard for the system, uncaptured by the system, but also an outsider who knows and understands the Constitution first personally. Like, not in a way that I'll look at my managerial class advisors and they'll say, oh, you can't fire people because of civil service protections. I think they did dupe Trump in this way. I think they duped him. His intentions were spot on in the right place. They duped him. They said, oh, civil service protections say you can't fire people. Wrong. Read the law. It actually only applies to individual firings. They don't apply to mass layoffs. Mass layoffs are absolutely what I'm bringing to Washington, D.C. And I just want to pause there for a second, because it's really important to understand. Just think of the people you've met in your life, right? Those 2 characteristics don't tend to go together. What does that mean, right? On one hand, you have like an entrepreneur who's a glass breaker, who's a builder, generally people who may have been financially successful enough in order to be able to be independent of that system. But they're not going to be the nerdy legal academics that are diving into the depths of U.S. case law and why the administrative state is actually unconstitutional or whatever. Then you have the people who are going to be the law professor types or whatever who'll be that, but don't have the capability as an executive or otherwise to see it through as a doer. That's what called me into this race, is I think that each of us has to look ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves, what are our unique attributes? We each have God-given gifts. The question of life is how you make the best use of your God-given gifts. And when I look myself in the mirror and our family together, said that this is our chance to actually fill that unique role right now that the country needs. And all the better, I think, somebody from a different generation, from the next generation, to reach young Americans in particular who I think are lost for purpose and meaning. And so give you that long wind up to say that my purpose in this, and I respect immensely Ron Paul and what he's done over a lasting time frame of decades now, shifting the terms of debate in this country. It was an honor of mine to meet him. I did his podcast earlier, but we met in person a few weeks ago, and I felt like I was meeting a legend, truly a hero. And that's important. It's just that that's not what I am aiming to do here. I think that there is a vacuum at the top. It's going to take a special combination of skills that don't usually occur together to play that role and to play it well. And so that's why we're in this. That being said, what are the ideas that we're advancing in the meantime and that we intend to implement? One is that the people we elect to run the government should be the ones who actually run the government. Mm-hmm. It's not too much to ask. That's not a Republican idea or a Democratic idea. Just we the people, we may disagree like hell about a lot of different things as citizens in this diverse democratic republic. Fine. But whoever it is, at least the people who we elect better be the ones who are actually running it. Right. First proposition. Second proposition. Avoiding World War III is a vital national priority. It's in every nation's self-interest, but I think it's in ours as well to avoid it. Number three, that war, relatedly to that, war should never be a preference, only a necessity. 4, that the moral obligation of U.S. policymakers is to U.S. citizens. I would punctuate that. The sole moral obligation of U.S. policymakers is to Americans here in our homeland. So far we can just pause that. I don't think anything I've said there is all that controversial.
Shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be. It is, actually.
Right.
It shouldn't be. But I mean, if you think about on that debate stage last night, I think I'm the only person who actually certainly believes in all of these things, but I would say maybe even believes strongly in each of these things, that the people we elect to run the government, not super PAC puppet masters in the back of Palace Halls, not ESG industrial complex kings in the back of BlackRock's corner office, not bureaucrats sitting in the back of 3-letter government agencies. The people we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who run the government. War is never a preference, only a necessity, and avoiding World War III is a vital national interest. That the sole obligation of a U.S. policymaker is to Americans here in our homeland. And then 4th, I'd add a couple more to this list. It is unsustainable for a nation to depend on its enemy for its modern way of life. That just doesn't work over the long run, because the foundation of dependency is economics, and that doesn't work over the long run. If somebody's hostile to the existence of your nation, but you depend on them for your modern way of life, you have to declare independence. I think that the value set of our founding fathers vis-a-vis old world England was one example of this. You may detect what I'm referring to here, which is our economic dependence on modern China. And then I think the final idea is that notwithstanding our failures, we still have every reason to be genuinely proud to be citizens of this nation, the United States of America. And that young people still have a chance to live in a country whose best days are still ahead of itself.
Very good comment.
Those would be the core ideas.
Yeah. They sound like it definitely resonates with a lot of American people who are just sick and tired of being told that you should hate yourself, that you should not be happy and proud of your country, when in reality, that kind of larger victimization ideology perpetrates a society that can't go really far. Mm-hmm. And I specifically wanted to hone in on foreign policy, because if you look at all the presidential candidates, we see Trump talking a good game when it comes to foreign policy. But at the same time, he also did bomb Syria himself, which brings into question, how will your foreign policy be different than, let's just say, a Donald Trump? I think that's a curious question that I would like to know.
Yes. So people is policy in this realm more than most. Okay. And so I want to say something very clearly here at the outset, which is that it irritates the hell out of me when other candidates are now, after sucking up and licking Trump's boots for years, which I did not do, by the way. But the ones who did are the ones now Monday morning quarterbacking him on some odd thing that in retrospect they could say they could do differently. So I'm not doing that. I actually happen to think he was an excellent president because he kept us out of wars and he grew the economy. Those are the two metrics those are two of the metrics, certainly, for judging a successful presidency. There are others, but he did really well on that. So he's an excellent president. And I use the learnings of his administration, not to say that I'm some sort of omniscient God and I would have done it differently in 2016, but we're all human beings. I learned from his experience, and what are we going to do differently under my watch? That's the spirit in which I mean this, because it irritates the heck out of me, the DeSantis's and the Nikki Haley's of the world. I mean, literally sucking up to this guy from money to endorsements to otherwise, now to sort of act like they're, hoity-toity, would have been sanctimonious. I mean, both of them should be, sanctimonious could be a nickname for both of them. All that being said, and they both have similar fashion habits too. But that's
good point.
But put that to one side. Here's what I will say: staffing decisions matter, especially when it comes to foreign policy. And so, Trump had the right foreign policy vision, but John Bolton didn't. John Kelly didn't. Mike Pompeo didn't. Nikki Haley didn't. I mean, don't forget she was in his administration. I like Mike Pompeo as like a human being amongst the people. You can't say the same for some of the others there, but that will necessarily frustrate the translation of vision into action. Okay, so that, I think, is probably one of the most important learnings, is that it's a tough balance between, on one hand, and I think this is really important, to have people who will challenge me and push back. I don't like being surrounded by yes men. I'm not at my best if I'm not being challenged. But how do you find that balance between being challenged on the application of your vision, but still having people who are actually bought into your vision?
Right.
So we rolled out this pledge actually in Miami the night before the debate, and everybody here who's listening to this, like, do one thing. It doesn't cost you a dime or anything else. Go to our no-to-neocons.com website. We put that up the night before the debate. No-to-neocons.com. We've laid out a pledge that every political appointee in my administration is going to be asked to sign. They include some of the principles that I laid out before. They shouldn't be controversial. There says 3 things on it. There's 3 things in the No to Neocons pledge, and all I need people to do, go to that site and sign up. You don't have to give money. You don't have to do anything. Just sign up and send a message that we're part of a clear statement to and within the Republican Party that we're done with the Dick Cheneyism of the past. One is that World War III and avoiding it is a vital national interest, avoiding World War III. 2 is war is never a preference, only a necessity. And 3 is the sole obligation of U.S. policymakers is to Americans here in the homeland, not to anybody else. Period. So I think that was missing in the staffing decisions that were made. And then I think we can get into the specifics, but actually, I think I just captured the most important point because his headspace, I think, is in the right place. But if the people implementing it translate it in a way that's off by half, even if it's off by a little bit on the basic vision, over a long enough distance, that's a big delta that creates a divergence. And so for me, everybody who's in the administration, certainly anyone who's a political appointee, and absolutely anybody who's touching a foreign policy role, will be steadfastly committed to those 3 principles. How we apply them, we'll have vigorous debate. But that's what I would do. And I think one of the areas, actually, now that you brought up Syria, where this came up, I'm just jogging my memory on the Trump administration here, is, as I recall this, people have to go back and look at the facts, but I think this is mostly correct, is Trump's initial instinct is he wanted to remove troops from Syria. But then suddenly, like, they kind of were, I mean, I think to the effect of, like, we're not going to let you do that.
I think he was actually lied to by his own generals.
Yeah,
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's the same way the deep state duped them on you can't fire these people in the administrative state, which again is false if you have a deep understanding of the Constitution, but it's a tough position to be in if everybody around you is literally saying you can't do that.
Right.
Say, let's get our troops out of Syria. They're just like, you can't do that.
Not just that, but lying to him and saying, yeah, we'll move the troops out, and then
But they didn't.
not moving the troops out. But then later on, Donald Trump was like, yeah, we'll just stay there and keep the oil, which at least is an honest discourse, which it's so much better than all the other lies that we were told under the Obama administration.
Look at it, we still have sons and daughters in Iraq,
Exactly.
actually. So all these places we told we were going to leave. So I think that's the most important difference is I'm not going to be a guy who has a website called no-to-neocons.com that appoints a bunch of neocons in the administration.
Well, that'd be very lovely. I appreciate that. I do have one question for you because, as a non-interventionist, as a free market capitalist, I understand, division of labor has led to some competitive advantages for China. No fan of China, let me be clear, but because of their lower labor costs, they have filled the void in our industrial gutting. How can we actually approach China? Because the way you describe them as having already been overtly our enemy, it makes me concerned that we will end up once again in kind of a Thucydides trap where the rising, falling empires, and we end up in a hot war where we can
I understand.
hopefully
and Taiwan's
avoid
a new Sicily between Rome and
there you
Carthage
go.
or something like this, right? So that's not where I want to get either. One observation I want to make is you can't be willy-nilly calling like 4 different countries that are in vague alliances with one another enemy, like the Russia-China alliance. I think we're driving Russia further into China's hands. That's what increases the risk of world war. I'm taking mostly China at their word and at their actions that they view the U.S. as hostile to their interests and are responding accordingly. But put all that to one side. Your point about economics is a good one. It was the gains from trade that led us. It was Adam Smith principles that led us to say that there's 2 sides to this trade. That works if both sides are economically motivated actors, right? I mean, China's run by a self-described Chinese Communist Party, and its goals are not solely economic, even as it engages in commerce. I think its goals include geopolitical goals that are commingled with its economic ones. So how do we keep the gains from trade mentality while solving for a TCP? I'm debating on whether I want to go into detail on this or not because it could be an hour discussion in itself. But let me just give an example that says to Airbnb, you must turn over U.S. user data as a condition for doing business in China, which isn't really capitalism because the use of that user data was a non-commercial lever that they want to hold. And there's now actually laws in China that ban some of those companies from even disclosing in the U.S. that they're doing it. Think about that, right? That reflects an intentionality that doesn't abide by what we thought of as the rules of the game. Now, in China, let's get the Chinese perspective on the table here, just to understand it. It's sort of like, who said those are the rules of the game? That's what you guys said was the rules of the game. We don't think that's the rules of the game. I can tell you a little funny story from a lawyer who did a deal in China. This is, if you want to get back on track, we can get back on track.
No,
This is a
you're
funny
fine.
little
Go on.
aside.
Yeah.
I haven't told this story during the presidential campaign. So some guy's a lawyer. He's doing a deal with like a Chinese company, and there's a general norm if you're writing up contracts, right, back and forth of if you use Microsoft Word, there's like the red line function.
Right.
Okay. So if you're a lawyer sending it to the other side, you do a red line of what was changed from the prior document. So you don't have to read a 100-page document and like magnifying lens come back. And then the next version, they red line what was different from the version you sent them. It's just like the codified norm of how deals are done in the United States and the modern West and whatever. So they're doing this, but then what they find is at the end of the deal, when they've signed it, there were a bunch of stuff that were in like the hundreds of pages that weren't redlined as changes, but they just made them as changes anyway.
Yep.
So they said, what the hell? You guys cheated on this agreement that we signed. Those are the rules. And like he said, the Chinese lawyer counterpart is, how imperialist of you to impose your norms on us. So what we call cheating, they view as internal to just the rules of the game.
It's gamesmanship.
So if you want to look at this from Mars, maybe you could say that, okay, there's just two different vantage points, but I'm going to now reassume the American vantage point, and I'm running to be U.S. president, that's the one I wear, to say that they're not playing by the same set of rules. Now, they would say that is the rules, but the law of the jungle is what governs, but we say they're not playing by the same set of rules. Like commerce, if you're engaging in mutual trade, you should have the same goals, which are economic in nature, not using that to covertly accomplish goals that have nothing to do with commerce. So against that backdrop, China's different than what we viewed as the neoliberal model of global trade that was supposed to lift all of us up from poverty. How do we fix it? One is I do think that this gets into a longer discussion, too, about the unintended consequences of the dollar being the reserve currency of the world, which I think is a good thing for the dollar to be. But that incrementally made U.S. exports more expensive than imports just because the dollar's bid up a little bit higher.
Right.
So it's
It
not that
also allowed us to live way above our means and export most of our inflation abroad. So
Yep, exactly. So we could debate the pros, cons, merits around, but it's just a fact that was the case. So U.S. manufacturers were systematically disadvantaged by the dollar being the reserve currency of the world. And so, anyway, that's a long way of saying I think some level of onshoring to the United States is not about a matter of economic inefficiency. It's just adjusting for what was a distortion created by the artificial bid higher on the dollar.
Sure.
And then the other thing I would say is we've been imperfect about trade relations with countries other than China.
Yes.
South Korea, Japan, India, Australia, or otherwise. And so I think that reopening some of those trade relationships to make up for supply chains that are otherwise dependent on China is a pro-trade approach to actually getting serious about reducing and eventually eliminating our economic dependence on China, which in turn may come back to complete the circle, where that would be worse for China economically than it would be for us. So even if they have commingled objectives, they do care about economic objectives enough that they will come back and say, hey, if they realize we're really serious about taking that approach, okay, we're going to play by the same set of rules that we actually signed up to
Then
in
we'll
the first
approach
place.
you as equals on a business
Which
setting.
I'm optimistic that could happen. But if not, you have to be serious about saying that we're not going to depend on somebody who's hostile to the United States for a modern way of life.
Would you support the TPP?
Not as such.
Got it.
But I would support bilateral trade agreements with some of the nations that are party to that agreement.
If it was actually a free market, is that correct?
Yeah, of course, on fair terms. I mean,
Yeah.
and
And many
Japan,
people-
and South Korea, we can get into some detail issues. I mean, and India, for that matter, too, of course, will try to get the better of the United States by having state-owned enterprises on their side of the deal, but not ours. And so, yes, we have to be, of course, do those deals in a way that's smart exclusively for the United States of America. but it is in service of reducing our dependence on China.
Absolutely, which I think is important, especially with the Tucídides trap that is unfolding. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about your foreign policy, what started it all, especially in 2001. A lot of other controversies, a lot of other things that are kind of deeper down the rabbit hole, but we can't do
9/11
that
in the bush.
We can't do that here on YouTube, so we are now going to be leaving YouTube right now. If you're watching on YouTube, go to Rumble.
You guys do this?
Are you
kidding me?
Yes, yes. So we are live
We have
multicasting
an
on multiple
exclusive deal on Rumble.
Yeah. So
No, but because you're going to say certain things, you have to.
you have to exactly. We'll
is
describe.
nuts.
We'll describe it to you. It is absolutely crazy.
I thought you were just joking.
how I have
and
to
then
be.
I saw him clicking. I'm like, oh my goodness.
I have to be extremely careful what I say here. I say the wrong thing. There's literally a blue armpit-haired
Have I said
flip
the wrong
flop
thing
wearing
so
yuppie.
far already?
No, you've been fine.
You were great.
Okay.
You were great.
It's,
But the
it's
issues.
us that are the problem.
That's why I keep going either.
The issues that
regardless.
we're going to get into, we can't get into on this platform. On Rumble, we have double the viewership than we do right now on YouTube. So
wow.
we're crushing it on Rumble. So if you want to go over, if you're watching right now, it's very easy. Just go to Rumble